Hi everyone, in this video we'll look at adding and subtracting rational expressions. So we'll look at a procedure for adding and subtracting rational expressions, but really this procedure will just become it'll just become intuitive after you become practiced at adding and subtracting rational expressions. So first thing that we're going to do when we add and subtract rational expressions is we're always going to factor if possible. And then when we factor, we're going to state any restrictions and then simplify if we can. Then we're going to figure out what a lowest common denominator is. And the lowest common denominator is going to be the least common multiple of all the denominators. Then we can express each rational expression as an equivalent rational with a common denominator, and then we simply add and subtract, or add or subtract the numerators. At the end, we're going to simplify if possible, and then state any restrictions. So let's look at a couple of examples of how to do this. So let's say we have 2a plus 3 over 3a. The first thing that I can do is I can simplify the second fraction by dividing out a factor of 3. So a factor of 3 divides out. And now I have 2a plus 1 over a. I can think about 2a as 2a over 1. And now I find a lowest common denominator. The least common multiple of 1 and a is just going to be a. So I'm going to have something over a plus some numerator over a. Well, I know that this is just going to be 1 over a. So the question is, what factor did I multiply the denominator by, which was 1 of this first fraction, to get a? And the answer is, I multiplied 1 by a to get a. I have to multiply the numerator by the same factor. If I multiply the numerator 2a by a, I get 2a squared. Now that the denominators are the same, and I found a lowest common denominator, I can add the numerators. So I get 2a squared plus 1 over a. And I have the restriction that a cannot be equal to 0. And I probably should have written that out in the first step as well. A cannot be equal to 0. In example B, I have 1 over x plus 6 minus 1 over x minus 6. Now, this is already factored, and I can't simplify, but I'm going to state some restrictions. One restriction is that x cannot be equal to minus 6, and x cannot be equal to 6. The next step is to figure out what the least common multiple of x plus 6 and x minus 6 is, and the easiest way to do that is just to look at, well, the least common multiple of x plus 6 and x minus 6 is just x plus 6 times x minus 6. But I can't just multiply the denominator of this first fraction by x minus 6. I have to multiply the numerator by x minus 6 as well. 1 times x minus 6 is just x minus 6. I'm going to do the same thing for the second fraction. So I get this fraction is missing a factor of x plus 6. So I'll multiply the denominator by x plus 6. And I now have x plus 6 times x minus 6. And in the numerator, I have to multiply 1 by x plus 6 as well. So I get 1 times x plus 6. All that I've done is I've just multiplied the numerator by x plus 6 and multiplied the denominator by x plus 6, which is the same thing as multiplying 1 over x minus 6 by 1, because x plus 6 divided by x plus 6 is 1. Now that I've found a common denominator, I can subtract the numerators. So I get x minus 6 minus bracket x plus 6, all divided by x plus 6 times x minus 6. And now I can go ahead and I can simplify this. When I distribute the negative into the bracket, I'll have x minus x, which is 0, and I'll have minus 6 minus 6, which is negative 12. So this simplifies to negative 12 over x plus 6 times x minus 6. And I have to restate my restrictions. My restrictions are that x cannot be equal to negative 6 and 6. In the next video, we'll look at some more involved questions where we add and subtract rational expressions.